Hunt the Night, the latest indie action RPG with a bleak world showcased through a 16-bit art style, chilling soundtrack, in this case from a well-known composer, and puzzles abound. There is platforming through a dash mechanic, and plenty of close, ranged, and ranged combat. Inspired by classics such as the Legend of Zelda series fused with touches of Bloodborne, it sounds like a recipe for success, and for about the first hour or so, I was really enjoying it. The rest, not so much. In Hunt the Night, you play as Vesper, who is a member of the Stalkers. Taking place in the world of Medrum, you are tasked with finding 5 fragments of the seal in hopes of restoring light to the world. Hunt the Night goes the Souls route to a degree with its storytelling, trickling out bits of narrative through small dialogue sections between characters, along with mysterious feathers which can be discovered across this world. These feathers also attempt to supply in-game clues. Notes that offer a peek into these dark lands and its history are also scattered across dungeons and houses, so if you've played any of the Souls games or the aforementioned Bloodborne, you'll have a decent idea of how this web is spun. This is very much one of those figure it out through lore type deals, and that's cool and all, but I just didn't find the writing to be especially strong myself. It almost comes off as trying a bit too hard to be like those other games. The world itself is really cool, begging for a rich narrative, but the characters in this world just aren't all that compelling or interesting to me, so I personally think I would have liked a more straightforward storytelling approach for this one, but that's just me. The first major hurdle you'll come across in Hunt the Night is its lack of difficulty settings, which in my opinion is a big mistake. I know fans of the Souls genre enjoy a steep challenge, and I'm not against that, even if the ridiculous backtracking through the same areas and fighting the boss 100 times gameplay loop isn't always for me, but I honestly can't say this game is hard in this case. Hard would imply that the game beat me fair and square, that I learned the lessons from each encounter and eventually overcame them. No, to me, Hunt the Night feels extremely cheap. Seriously, it's like the world's most annoying enemies all formed a coalition to star in a game together. Of course, being an action RPG, the combat is a huge focal point. You'll have a variety of swords to swing, as well as guns and arrows to shoot at your foes. When firing off ranged attacks, your feet will be planted, which can often lead you wide open to attacks. You can technically try to land shots while moving, but it feels pretty worthless when you can't properly aim. Be ready to dash at all times too in Hunt the Night, as if you stay still for even a moment, you're almost certainly going to be pelted with bullets or arms or all sorts of nonsense. Each enemy seems to be designed to have just the right frames of animation to where their attacks can hit you, as your lead character's animation leaves you vulnerable. Some of you might have an appreciation for this, but I just didn't think it translated all that well to Hunt the Night. In games like Bloodborne, I felt like I could glide around my enemies, circle them, pick and choose my attacks, and hit at the right moment. Here, not so much. I think part of the problem is that often battles take place in extremely tight situations. Even worse, enemies can spawn right on top of you, and they almost all inflict insane amounts of damage. Wanting to heal? Oh yeah, the slow potion chug of Souls games is in full effect here in the form of roses. You'll often die just trying to consume the damn thing, or you'll die by trying to earn bullets back, which is done by dishing out damage. The theme of Hunt the Night, just as you might expect, die, die, and die again. Try to learn from your mistakes, that whole loop, except in this case, I just didn't feel like I was learning. More often than not, I just lucked my way through a battle, dashing endlessly and striking away and hoping I won and being able to get a heal off in time. Mercifully, you can eventually earn upgrades and find new weapons, but after about an hour of gameplay, the shortcomings of Hunt the Night begin to rear their ugly head. During those opening hours, yes, hours, almost every weapon I came across would have 10 strength and maybe some other little perk, with the more powerful sword being ridiculously slow and leaving me wide open to attacks, with enemy attacks dishing out so much damage and often very little room to work with or plan out a strategy. It's just a frustrating experience. I despised most of the enemy patterns in Hunt the Night and didn't find them fun to conquer at all. Zombies do massive damage and hurl fireballs at a distance, but strike you whenever you try to get close. Invisible enemies are maddening and often impossible to even see coming, and the bosses, a huge difficulty spike. I fought the second boss of this game for over an hour, and when I did finally topple him, it didn't feel satisfying at all. It just felt like I got lucky with a pattern that wasn't quite as obnoxious as the previous 50. Worse yet, you won't even be able to get to the game's hub of shops and upgrades until you conquer this first area of the game, and when you finally do, everything is very expensive, which means having to go out and grind experience against enemies that just aren't all that fun to take down. As I mentioned, Hunt the Night also features a decent amount of puzzles, as well as the occasional time challenge. These involve tossing switches and making a mad dash to the other end of the room before a timer runs out. I personally don't like stuff like this, particularly when obnoxious enemies get in your way. They knock you off the platforms, and they deal huge amounts of damage too. The puzzles themselves were kind of neat at times, however. A lot of the solutions are hidden in notes, and as someone who enjoys the occasional Silent Hill or survival horror puzzle, I got a bit of that vibe here, which was cool. So in the end, the puzzle elements are a bit of a mixed bag. The game often hopes to build immersion through its exploration and puzzle design, but instead, this often just led to a lot of wasted time where I had no map to access, and thus, wandering and frustration ensued more often than not. There is one feature of this game that I really quite like though, and it's the ability to have this ghost kind of leave your body. You unlock this eventually, and that can traverse over ponds of poison. I thought this was neat. Much like the combat, the platforming sections of the game often rely on your dash. While you can dash off in multiple directions, it doesn't translate well when trying to move from platform to platform. Much like in the time challenges, this led to plenty of cheap hits, deaths, and general frustration. If you were hoping for precise, tight movement, you just won't find it here. But through it all, I just kept on trudging through this review, hoping that Hunt the Night would open up and get more exciting, and it does finally open up, and you are presented with a vast overworld, but this is where the game lost me entirely. Not only did I experience annoying frame rate dips across this world, but I was pretty much dumped off with little idea of what to do next. Again, the game's attempt at being immersive and giving players freedom to explore. I think that's great when executed on effectively, but that just isn't the case in Hunt the Night. This overworld is confusing, full of the same enemies I came to hate in the previous dungeon, and that's a shame because you can see all the ambition that went into crafting a big area full of caves and houses to explore for treasures and lore. While it's an impressive accomplishment that an indie could create such a large overworld, it simply wasn't a fun playground to let loose in. There are side hunts for you to take on where you can try to go off and slay baddies. There's a halfway decent save system in this game where you can regain health, and you can even fast travel, but it's all squandered by the core mechanics of this title just not being very fun in my opinion. You'll bump around this map, hitting dead end after dead end, dying time and time again, and not even realizing certain areas can be accessed. There was this faint ray of light that pointed me into a direction at one point that I didn't even notice forever. Finally, when you do think you've found a new area, nope, that's blocked or locked off too. When you do find characters to talk to as you seek guidance, they're cryptic as well in what they say, so you just don't really have any idea where to go. Go east was one of the clues I got, for example. Okay, go east, but then I'm bumping into all these walls and it's just, oh my goodness. The frustrating part about me not enjoying playing Hunt the Night is that its world is really beautiful to look at. The creepy red eyeballs that litter its dungeons, dark, moody caves, a mysterious overworld, plenty of blood. It's all dark and atmospheric, accompanied by a lovely set of orchestrated compositions from Hiroki Kakuta of Secret of Mana fame. The game looks and sounds stunning, even though it's not without technical issues. Sometimes long load times left me wondering if my game had crashed altogether. Hits don't always register, which I mostly experienced with my worthless feeling shotgun, and other little bugs and annoyances were not uncommon, though the developer has stated they're aware of the issues that are present in the review build, so hopefully these will be ironed out. I really wanted to love Hunt the Night as someone who enjoys games like classic Zelda, Alundra, and has dabbled a bit in Bloodborne, which I thought was great. I was hoping this would be a wondrous fusion of all those things, but I have to be 100% honest, I could not bring myself to continue on with this game. I let myself cool down, I came back to it a few times, I even slept on it for a night and returned the next day, but I just couldn't get into this game. The same jerks you have to fight over and over, the bumbling, the bad combat. I just could not bring myself to continue with Hunt the Night. All of that said, I fully understand that this game is going to have a few fans out there. Undoubtedly, someone will get that old difficulty boner and perhaps have the patience to deal with these clunky mechanics, but again, for me, it wasn't a difficult game, it was just a cheap one, so that's just not fun. Hunt the Night was one of my bigger disappointments of 2023 so far, and it's only recommended to those with extreme patience that desperately need another dark action RPG to explore. For everyone else, I would honestly recommend something like Slain Back from Hell or There Is No Light over this one.